Day 280 of the Trump administration gives the president new ownership of a group he's been at times reluctant to embrace, his own party. The opinion pages these days are filled with headlines and sentences like the following. The Republican Party is now the Trump Party. Party of Lincoln is now the party of Trump. It's Trump's GOP, so now what? Well, since becoming the Republican nominee for president, Trump has gone from "I alone can fix it," remember that convention speech, to ready to compromise with his friends, the Democrats, Chuck and Nancy, to now preaching the great unity that exists in the GOP. After mentioning unity at least 10 times by our count yesterday, he made the case again today on Twitter. He wrote, quote, "Do not underestimate the unity within the Republican Party." That message comes after 3 sitting U.S. senators who happen to be members of his party have called out his behavior, his ability to lead, comments that have forced the rest of the Republican Party to react to this increasingly obvious divide growing inside the GOP.
I don't think the American people want to see us up here yelling at each other. They want to see us fighting for them. The American people want results. And so that's what we're focused on.
I'm not trying to sound like a prude here, but, you know, when you're president of the United States, your words matter. Your words are policy. And the insults, I think, are very unhelpful. It doesn't build relationships. It only creates enemies.
I, for one, believe that we ought to quit fighting each other everywhere we can and focus on the substantive issues.
We've made this about personalities and less about policy. I think if we can stay on policy, look, I have had honest disagreements with the president, and yet I'm still on very good terms with the president.
I think Jeff Flake and Bob Corker will do what they think is best for the country.
There are 535 of them on the Hill. Each elected official has their own approach to handling the tension that is becoming more difficult to ignore. Take the last senator we heard right there, Lindsey Graham, Republican, South Carolina. His strategy seems to be singular. A New York Times headline tonight reads, "As other Republican senators bolt, Lindsey Graham cozies up to Trump." The report says this: Mr. Graham, Republican of South Carolina and a one-time target of the president's barbs on Twitter, has transformed himself into the Senate's Trump whisperer, shrugging off the White House chaos, personal insults, and deep ideological differences in exchange for Mr. Trump's ear. Let's bat this around with our leadoff panel tonight. Ashley Parker's with us, White House reporter for The Washington Post and an MSNBC political analyst. Michael Crowley's with us, senior correspondent for Politico, and Shannon Pettypiece with us tonight, White House correspondent for Bloomberg News. Ashley, is it this stark right now, as of tonight? You've got Trump and you've got the McCain, Corker, Flake center of power. Is there any middle or any movement in the middle?
I think the most interesting space is the non-public space. So you have those senators you just mentioned who are out there publicly. You have the members of Congress who actually do legitimately support the president. And then there is this sort of private middle ground of members of Congress and Republicans in Washington, D.C., who are sort of personally and honestly much closer to the outspoken senators, but they're not prepared to say it yet. So I don't know if you can actually call that a middle ground if they're not acting on it, because they would certainly fall into this either supportive or silent camp. But there is a lot of consternation that we're seeing voiced from a couple key members who have nothing to lose, either because they're retiring or they feel like they've faced far worse than President Trump in their life. And then you have these other people who aren't quite ready to come forward.
And Shannon, were you surprised this president, who has quite an aversion to talking points and sticking to them, using the word unity over the past 24 hours?
It seemed like an ironic day to be talking about unity. But I do think there is a point he is trying to make, or maybe it's not necessarily he's trying to make it, but I do think there is a level of unity out there when it comes to policy on a lot of issues. I mean, these guys are all still Republicans. Guys and a few gals, I should say, are all still Republicans. On the big ideological issues, they all still agree. And there is disagreement on things like immigration. There was disagreement over health care. That bill really could have been handled much differently. But when it comes to policy, there is unity. Where we're seeing the fighting and the disagreement often comes to how to handle the president. It comes to how they react to his language, his rhetoric, his inflammatory tweets. That seems to be what a lot of the fighting is about. And they've really gotten away to substantive discussions about, how we should best handle immigration or healthcare or taxes.
And Michael, when it isn't the president talking in what Ashley correctly identifies as the public space, the guy eating up all the voids and filling all the space is Steve Bannon, whose name has never appeared on a ballot. And I know you've spent time reading and thinking and writing about him and talking to folks about him. We can say this: he loves a fight. He loves any fight. They don't have to be contemporary fights. He loves the fights of yore.
He does. He's fascinated by conflict, revolution, war. He's a history buff. He's a kind of a student of world history. Some people would say that he's sort of, a half student. He draws unusual lessons, reads eclectically, and comes to unusual conclusions, but he's clearly fascinated. The French Revolution fascinates him. Brian, the Peloponnesian War is kind of an obsession of his. Thucydides, Athens versus Sparta. He wrote an essay before he went to work for Donald Trump about the rivalry between Breitbart and Fox News, of all things, and compared that to the conflict between Athens and Sparta. So I think he has this sort of revolutionary, constant conflict warfare mentality that is playing out now in American politics. This is how he operates, and it's you can see where he has the kinship with Donald Trump, who on a, let's say, less historically oriented, less intellectual level, thrives on constant conflict. It's always a battle. But I think for Bannon, it's on a somewhat higher level where he really does think in revolutionary terms, thinks this is a revolutionary moment in American politics, and is kind of going for the kill to smash the establishment, to smash the governing state if he can. And that's what adds a huge amount of drama to this.
This broadcast has been on the air about 14 months, give or take. First reference to the Peloponnesian War right here tonight, thanks to our friend Michael.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.